Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle James Rally et je suis réalisateur chez NASA et aussi je crée des images, des dreamscapes, je les appelle totalement en 3 dimensions, principalement avec Blender sur Instagram. Je mets les sous-titres en anglais pour vous qui ne parlent pas le français, mais je voulais faire cette introduction totalement en français pour mes amis francophones et principalement pour mon ami Florian, qui est le créateur de cette compagnie qui s'appelle BProduction. Cette compagnie crée des add-ons totalement pour Blender et il y a plusieurs add-ons sur ce site web de Blender Market. Aujourd'hui, on va décrire 3 add-ons sur ce site web, y compris Gobos Light Textures, Vegetation avec les plantes, les arbres, tout ça. Et finalement, l'add-on que Florian vient de finir qui s'appelle Liquid Splash. Vous pourriez trouver tous ces add-ons sur ce site web et je les ai mis avec un lien dans la description de cette vidéo. Okay, now I'll switch back to English and let's get started with this tutorial. Okay, so we're starting with the Gobos Light Texture add-on here. And so first off, if you're not familiar with what Gobos are, if you are familiar with anything theatrical, any plays or things like that, this is kind of where these originate from. Gobos in real life are effectively these little kind of filter screens with perforations, little holes that you'll slot over a lamp, a light, that will then cast unique shadows on the scene. This is used all the time in theater to project like trees or kind of weird objects. And you can add sometimes like a little bit of movement sometimes if you're able to kind of have them animated a little bit with different colors or kind of have the filter itself start to kind of rotate a bit around. And you can see an example of what this looks like in 3D. So basically you have your traditional spotlight and then you're slotting a gobo here, this kind of little, circular model that has holes in it that then will ultimately have a shadow projection on the objects in your scene. And so you might wonder, well, why do you use things like this? What's the point of stuff like this? And so this is a nice still that Florian has included in his scene here. And so basically it adds realism to your scene, right? So 3D, it's very easy to make something look perfect, right? A little too perfect, a little bit uncanny almost, because when you put things in, everything has perfectly smooth edges, your lights are perfectly rounded and look fantastic, right? But it's missing that touch of realism. If you look in real life around you, that's really generally not how the world looks, right? You've got shadows from trees that are kind of bouncing on your surface. You've got, plane flies overhead, cast a shadow on the surface as it kind of moves along. There's all of these imperfections that in order to achieve realism, you want to be able to add to your scene. And this is something I think about all the time when I'm making my renders, and just adding little details like this to your scene can really just take it so much closer to that realism that you're looking for. Okay, so now I'm over in Blender and let's start talking about Gobos and how you put it to use in a real scene that you're making. So unlike a typical add-on that you would enable by going over to edit preferences and add-ons and then install from disk, this is one that you're actually going to be linking as an asset library to your scene, and then you can actually drag and drop all of your assets into your scene. It's very convenient. It's a nice, easy way to kind of preview them as you go through. So also make sure to always download the most recent ones that are available there. I often will check the different add-on libraries that I have just to make sure that I am using the most recent set that has been released. So this is the one I'm using. It is version 2.1. There might be a new version since this video has been recorded potentially, but be sure to check that out. And I'll just do a quick scroll through here just to show you all the different ones that are available. And so these, again, really just add a little bit of extra life to your scene. And we can use a specific example here just to kind of preview what this looks like in a second. But you've got a lot for different use cases, even ones that kind of simulate what a window looks like. So this could be helpful if you're just kind of zoomed in, maybe on the floor or something. And one really cool thing to do too is to actually add in volumetrics, and you can actually split up the light rays a bit better. And this is a trick I use all the time in my scenes to really make the volumetrics look that much juicier, having all the different nice God rays coming through. Even if you don't necessarily have a window or something that's really breaking up the light super well, you can throw in one of these gobo lights, add in a volumetric cube, and then you have some great results. So we can show that in a second too. But there's certain ones in here that I feel like I gravitate towards. And you'll notice for some of them, it says animated next to it, which is very interesting because it adds that even extra layer of noise, of kind of randomness, a little bit of disorder to your scene to break up the perfect lines and edges of your scene. Again, it really just adds to that realism. And I feel like the ones I've been gravitating towards most recently have been these animated leaves. So let's show you an example of what this looks like. So if you have one in mind, you can just pull it out onto your scene. And when you place it, it automatically places in this spot lamp. If I go over here, this is a spot lamp. You can adjust these parameters. You can change the color, the power, even the radius or beam size if you wanted to. And so let me just kind of pull this up into my scene here and actually preview this. Let's switch over to rendered mode. I'm going to make sure that I do have denoiser on. Let's just reduce the samples just so this plays a little bit faster. And then let's just add in a UV sphere. I'm going to shade this smooth so you can see what the shadows look like. And as soon as I bring this into the beam, if I zoom in a little bit here, you'll see what's going on. So now that it's crossing into this beam, you can see the shadows that this lamp is casting on it. And if I drag this over here so we have a timeline so we can actually preview what this looks like animated, if I hit play, it's a little bit fighting through noise here, but you can kind of see what's going on. So this is kind of shifting and moving and kind of going around. And so once you were actually to render this out, you'd see these really fantastic shadows as if there was a tree in the scene kind of blowing in the breeze, delicately casting these shadows. And this just, again, adds so much extra detail to your scene and just looks absolutely fantastic. And like I said, again, you can adjust the color here. You can change this to blue, for example. You can really crank this power up if you wanted to have it a lot more intense. And so I'll use this a lot for my scenes, forest scenes, nature scenes, stuff like that. But then also I use it quite a bit for underwater scenes too. So if I'm trying to cast, kind of caustics and stuff on my scene, this is one really good way to do that too. And you can actually add in a little extra detail too. Sometimes I'll throw a couple of these kind of layered up. So I'll have like an animated color one here. So this is just kind of little colors, kind of iridescent colors. It looks really nice. Almost kind of what you'd see if you're swimming in a pool, these kind of like, I don't know, weird kind of scintillations, these colors going around. And then on top of that, you can stack some other ones too. So you can put in, there are caustics. These ones are not animated. So typically what I do for caustics is actually just animated noise texture on one of these, but you can add this in and then maybe add in, one of the animated leaves or trees or something like that on top of it. And so you kind of have a little bit of an extra randomness to your color and also a little bit of extra randomness to the luminosity itself. And this just adds for really great results. And again, just really makes your scene look that much more realistic. Or to do one more example here, I've just set up a plane and let's actually just add in one of these gobos here as well. So I'm going to add in this caustics one and let's just kind of scale this up here a bit. So it's kind of covering more of the scene. You can also just change the spotlight size so that this is spread out a lot more over the scene like this. You can see how that's kind of casting some nice caustics onto the scene. I'm going to kind of move this up a bit here, maybe crank this up a little bit higher too. And then let's actually add in a cube to the scene. I'm going to scale this cube up a bit here. And let's kind of move this up a bit like this. And let's actually switch over to the shader editor. So I'm going to open up the shader editor, make a new material. And instead of having the principled BSDF here, I'm actually going to delete this and add it in a principled volume shader. Connect the volume output to the material output like so. And you can see the density is extremely high. So I'm actually going to turn this down quite a bit. Let's maybe turn it down a little bit more too. And let's maybe brighten it up just a little bit here. And then let's give it like kind of like a nice underwater kind of glow, like a little bit of a bluish texture to it. We can also just change our caustics like to be a little bit more blue too as well. And so if I zoom in here, this is giving a really nice effect as if you're almost like underwater here. And if I kind of move this light here, you'll see what's going on. It looks absolutely fantastic. So this is a really quick way to add volumetrics, and you can just see the difference that this makes. So let me compare this to just a traditional spotlight as well here, just so you can see the difference in these two. So let me make sure that these parameters are the same as well. So you get a fair comparison here. So I'll make this 10,000. Let's just copy that hex code from our color here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me Control Z. My cat is standing here on my keyboard, typing his keys in. So he's preventing me from, there we go, he sat down, so now I can actually type this in. There we go. So that is now there, and let's actually change that spot size to be the same too. So 136 was that one. So let me raise this up here, and so you can see the difference that this is, right? Let me toggle these on and off. So this is our caustic from the BProduction Gobos library. Let me turn this off. And then this is our just traditional spotlight. So you can see the light is very diffuse. It is extremely spread out. You don't really have these very defined beams because it is just one beam. And this is the issue with 3D. Like I said, it comes just out of the box too perfectly, right? This looks, nice. Still, you get some nice lighting, but it's just, there's no detail in here. And so there's no comparison once you actually put in something like this where you actually have
just really fantastic. And you see how quickly I just sketched this up. Usually I'll take a little bit more time with this. Lighting, I think for me, just in general with my 3D renders, is what I spend probably the most time with, because I'm constantly tweaking things, going back and forth, often going outside in real life just to kind of look at and see how light plays on the scenes, on the environments around me. And so then I ultimately will make kind of new scenes. So just really quickly when I walk through this is one of those things I really encourage you to play around with a lot yourself. But that's just a quick example of how you can really add some fantastic realism to your scene. All right, so add-on number 2 that we're going to talk about is probably the one I use, I think, the most out of probably any add-on for Blender in general, and it is a fantastic library. I really can't stress this enough. It is a fantastic library of trees, plants, and natural assets, as the title says here. And I mean, I couldn't recommend this more, because like I said, I literally use this for almost every single render for a couple reasons, because it comes out of the box with a fantastic amount of really great assets that you can use for your scene. But what I really like a lot about it too is it integrates super well with another add-on called Geoscatter, which I've talked about before in other videos. I can certainly make an updated video because they're constantly working on updates as well. But what that does is it gives you these biomes, they're called. And so when you go over into Blender and set a plane as your scatter object to scatter your objects onto, you have a bunch of presets that you can just click to scatter, and it automatically kind of defaults to putting all these things in your scene super quickly. And then from there, you have a really good starting point, a really good canvas to kind of work off to refine your scene. And you've got a couple different ones that pretty much cover really any kind of nature scene you're trying to make. You got tropical, coniferous, deciduous, and desert biomes. And I've used assets for all of these all the time in my scene. Another really great thing about these is the detail looks fantastic on them. They hold up really well, very close, and also obviously work really far away. And most recently, he's been adding in some really great animation to these as well. So you kind of get this little subtle motion that looks really cool. And so we can talk about this as well too. And yeah, the list goes on and on. Another thing that's really cool is the seasons too. So you can really quickly change this. The shader setup for this is fantastic. So often, you know, one asset can really go a long way because you could just really quickly just change how it looks. And keep going here. There's randomization to it as well. So when you add something in, this is something I talk about a lot in my videos too. I think I talked about this in the first video I made this year with a poinsettia 3D scan that I made. And if you've not checked this video out already, I'll link this in the description too to watch. But when you make an add-on, say you model something yourself, you spend a lot of time making that, right? It's a nice thing. You want to use it and reuse it. But you're like, it's the same thing. I can't just kind of keep copying and pasting all over my scene. Well, you actually can if you scale it and rotate it and kind of move it around differently. And so that's effectively what's happening here. So he's got the same tree here, and you can add in a new one and then hit to randomize it. And basically it just changes the size, position, the colors changed a little bit here. And so you can just with one asset really quickly create a whole different scene. And so I'll do this a lot too, and just kind of keep appending trees and randomizing them and moving them around. And just really quick, just kind of kit bash this scene. You can add moss to your scenes as well. Nice little extra details. Again, it's all about the details. This is how you get to realism. It's a lot of things that you don't necessarily even think about, but it's extremely noticeable if you don't put them in, right? I think one thing I can always tell as a beginner is some of these details like this. If I see a render, I'm like, yeah, that's missing some of these details. It really sticks out to your eye. Just as humans, we're so used to observing the natural world around us. So when anything feels like a little bit off, it really feels glaringly, obviously off. And so again, I encourage you to really spend time detailing these. You even get some rocks in here too, for God's sake. So a lot of really great stuff. And let's actually kind of go in and start to walk through a bit about what you've got. So I've got kind of a basic scene set up here, right? With some rocks, we've got some nice lighting. For this add-on, as opposed to the other one, it's not enabled as an asset library. There is a whole workflow to kind of installing it, but once you have it installed, it comes into Florian's got this vegetation library that he has set up here, and everything is neatly organized into different categories. So if you want to look for just bonsai trees, you can click on that, and then you have a nice drop-down. You know, if I'm just looking for shrubs, you can click on that, and you get a nice drop-down, and you can kind of preview all the different ones you're working with. So, you know, for this scene, it's kind of a bit of a desert scene. So let's think about some desert plants we want to add in. Maybe we want to add in, you know, one of these cacti. So when you click on it, you select your object that you want. You just hit to append asset. That's typically what I do. And this just appends it into your scene where your cursor is. So now I've got this cactus here. And you can just move this around your scene and kind of scale it up and rotate it and change it around and, you know, have some fun playing around with it. This one, I mean, you're not really going to see much animation because cacti really don't, I guess, blow in the breeze. So kind of ignore this section for now, but I'll come back to it. And, you know, this is what I really like about these, is just adding these into the scene. Let's add in some other smaller ones here around here too. And you can just kind of move them around here. If you want to snap tree to ground, you can do that, and it snaps it to that ground plane just to kind of make your job a little bit easier. So for example, let me just kind of show this. If I have this kind of way up here, hit snap to ground, and it just snaps it right onto where the ground plane of your scene is. That's just kind of helpful when you're just trying to like move things around and make sure that it kind of like aligns well with that ground plane. Sometimes I have to raise it up a little bit if there's like some rocks and stuff in the scene, but this is a pretty good start already. So let's add in some actual shrubs or trees to kind of have a bit of animation going on here. So I'm going to go over to, let's see, let's check out some, let's just go to all, just to search through here and just see. So I'm going to scroll down here and let's see if we can find a nice tree or something to use in our scene. So I really like this tree here. So let's add this one in here. I'm going to scale this up a bit so you can kind of see what's going on. I'll move this over here. And let's go down to animation. And so I'm going to actually animate the leaves here. And usually I like to kind of turn this down just a little bit so it's not super overpowering. Maybe just turn the speed down a bit, the strength down a little bit. And I'm going to change this to timeline. And let's just hit to play here. And I'm actually going to just go out of render mode so you can actually see this a little bit better. But as I play through here, you get this kind of nice, like little subtle motion to the animated leaves that looks really fantastic. And there are presets here. You can do like a light breeze, a medium wind, a strong wind. So if I switch this to a medium wind, you can see it's also checked on to animate the trunk. So the trunk itself is kind of oscillating a little bit in the breeze. You get a really strong wind here. You maybe got some storm going on. Really crank the wind force up, the wind speed, turn down the randomness a bit, and just have fun with it. So I do this a lot here. You can have it animate in the different axes as well, X or Y like that. So yeah, this is really quick, really easy to kind of go around and have some fun playing with the scene. And the cat is interested, so you know it's cool when that happens. So I use this all the time for my scenes as well, just adding some kind of subtle motion to it. That's obviously a little bit too intense, so kind of turned it back down to just a typical light breeze here. I feel like this often looks the best. All right, and for the last add-on, I had to grab a jacket. It's, again, a little chilly here. We're going to talk about Liquid Splash, which is the newest addition. This one just came out as I'm recording this 13 days ago. It's a really cool one. This is one I've been kind of looking for a while, more so for still images. So for now, the ones I'm seeing that they've created are all for stills, but they look fantastic. They're based on like real water simulations that have been created. The detail is fantastic for this stuff, and it also integrates with your asset browser, similar to the very first add-on that we used for this video, the Gobos lighting texture. So it's a really nice kind of just drag and drop as you kind of just go through and create your scenes. So I've been using these kind of from, like I said, more of these still images for really great architectural rendering scenes. And it also got a really cool little texture system here too. So we can kind of talk through this. I'll walk through kind of, I guess, a use case or example for some of how you would do this kind of stuff. So a lot of different things to choose from. You can see just some of the details. It really holds up extreme close up. These are some artistic examples of how they've zoomed in. But also, you know, obviously for more architectural elements like these fountains and stuff, it looks great as well. So lots of really cool stuff. So let's go over to Blender and I can show you how this works too. So when you import this into the asset browser, it already neatly organizes everything into categories. So you could just sort by all of them if you wanted. But if you're looking for more specific things, generally I'm looking for things like fountains or cascading waters, where I tend to use probably the most from this kind of pack. But you also have some other fun stuff too, like shower water too. I've done a couple kind of beachy renders where there's like an outdoor shower. And this always looks really nice too. And it's kind of the same deal like I showed you before, where you just drag and drop your item into the scene here. And you can see how it holds up very, very well. I mean, this looks very fantastic. You see the detail of the simulation. You've got even like little splashes right here on the ground too. And let's pop this over to rendered view. Let's add in a little bit of an lighting setup here so we can actually see what is going on. Let me actually crank this up a bit here so you can actually see a little bit more of the what we have going on here. Going the wrong way. There we go. So you can see there's a really fantastic water texture that's already on this one right now. And if I drag over to the shader editor, let's have a play and see what we got going on. So you've got a couple different node groups here that you can plug in. So right now we're using the glass one, they call it. So it's the water texture. It's got an index to refraction 1.5 here. So this is, you know, very basic texture. It's just a transparent texture. But you can also do a milk one here. So if you wanted to have this look like, I guess, running milk, that looks pretty interesting. Or chocolate or sewage waste maybe for this last one. I like to think it's chocolate, not sewage waste, but this kind of looks a little bit more like sewage waste, the way it's kind of pouring out here, like a waterfall. So let's switch back to like a nicer looking one here. And what's cool about these is you can kind of stack this stuff too. And so I'll often kind of kit bash things together when I'm making these types of scenes. And this also, once again, kind of breaks up your scene a little bit, makes a little bit more randomness and stuff into the project here. Let me kind of make sure that this is lined up properly here. So you kind of just like can layer these things up here together. And you would put this typically over something like some rocks or stuff like that. So let me just kind of like block some stuff out here. We'll use like some kind of like icospheres here in the background here just to kind of show you how this would hold up behind, you know, something. You just kind of would stage some items, some rocks and stuff around here. So this would kind of just be like in the scene here, cascading over around your elements. So really fun. And like I said, they've got some kind of fun abstract things too here. You got these kind of fun, weird splashers and stuff like that too, which looks really great. So lots of different little things to choose from. So plenty of things to play around with. So I always recommend, just take some time just to play around with this. And this is one that just came out a very good price. I linked it in the description here if you want to access this too. Yeah, so I just wanted to once again thank Florian for his really incredible support of just Blender in general, the tools he makes. I just scratching the surface here of what's available. You know, have a look on his website, or the Blender Market website here, linked in the description. There's so much other stuff out there to choose from. I mean, this is just the start. And like I said, he makes these new things. Like I'll get a message from him, like he's releasing a new add-on or an asset pack, and it seems like it's almost like once or twice like a month. He's churning out just like extremely high quality assets and add-ons here for the Blender marketplace. And what that does is it really is just advancing the software just across the board too. To have stuff of this quality in something like Blender free to access, it is fantastic. And I mean, this is getting the software on par, the capabilities of it on par with, you know, more industry standard stuff. Blender is becoming the industry standard, you know, with a lot of these new developments. So I use it all the time for my work. I mean, it's the primary software I use, Blender and Unreal Engine. So it's been really cool to see these tools and be able to integrate them into my workflow. So I encourage you to check these out yourself, and I'm very excited to see what you create. And I'll see you on the next one.